What I'm looking for is for the fat to start rendering and to start bubbling over. And we call those pizza bubbles. We're basically trying to make like Neapolitan style pizza. So this is either the best brisket you've ever had or the best Neapolitan style pizza you've ever had.
So today we have several products here that we're going to go through step by step on the technique of handling them. And we're going to highlight the curing and dry aging process of fish. Here at Erizo for the menu, curing and aging of fish plays a really vital role. There's a lot of ingredients that are super seasonal, and so preservation of seafood is a really vital thing to, just honoring tradition, but as well as being able to preserve product to have throughout the year and to utilize the most of it that we possibly can. Two things that we're trying to accomplish when we dry age. One is to eliminate moisture. It's gonna have more of the natural oils in the flesh express themselves. It's gonna have a firmer texture, more of a bite to the fish, rather than having a watery quality, which is typical of a fish that is either still in rigor mortis or hasn't been cleaned properly. The idea that fish straight out of the water, or the fresher the fish is, the better, is completely false. This is something that is standard practice in most sushi restaurants. They just don't really talk about it as much during the dining experience. Okay, so we have a McFarland Springs trout. We're gonna dip this fish into beeswax. So we're gonna go ahead and clean this fish. So typically we don't buy any sort of farmed fin fish, but this is a trout that was developed in Northern California. We buy it from a company called 2x, but it's almost its entirely own breed because of what they feed it. So this is the only farmed fish that exists that is fed a 100% vegetarian diet, but it's also just far and away superior in quality. It's not something that's legal to serve wild. It's not a commercial fishery. So being able to work with a farm that's just doing it the right way and then also coming up with this high quality of an ingredient, it checks all the boxes. The beeswax technique for preserving things is an ancient technique. It's a wax layer that keeps out light and moisture. The nice thing about using the wax is that it adds a really nice aroma to the meat. So here we have our beeswax that we're going to use to encapsulate the fish to help extend the dry aging process. So as you can see, this has just been melted down. The thing about beeswax is that it cools down so quickly. You're just trying to get as really thin of a layer as possible, so it'll just be dunked extremely quickly and taken out, and it'll cool almost instantly. And we're just getting essentially a paper thin layer of wax on the fish. So not only does the beeswax help create a layer, essentially blocking moisture from escaping too rapidly, it also adds a nice flavor and aroma to the trout itself. As you can see here, we have the trout aging in beeswax that we've just hung up. And then we have the other fish that are a week older that have already been submerged in beeswax and then had the wax removed, and now they're just drying out. And these are one of the ones we're gonna grab to break down. So essentially what we're looking for here is we just wanna feel that it's dried out slightly, but isn't completely petrified. And you can see that this is also dripping oil, which is another sign that the fish is properly conditioned. Yes. Okay, so here we have the fish that's been aged for about a week in the beeswax, and we're going to remove the wax to show you what the changes have made inside as far as to the texture of the flesh and also of the skin. So the first step is to remove the head. Straight through. And then we're going to start to peel the wax away from the tail. The skin has really dried out. It's not tacky anymore, but it still has flex to it, so it's not super dry, which is the main reason why we use the beeswax, is so that we can age it for longer without the fish getting too dry. You can kind of brush your hand across and you can just see this fat, the oil is starting to express itself. So that's just gonna make the fish taste more like itself. It's gonna have better mouthfeel. Also, the fact that this has dried and the oil has started to express itself, creates a little bit of separation between the meat and the skin, which almost causes the skin to like puff off of the outside of the meat. We're gonna trim this up a little bit to get it ready for the grill.
So I'm just going to put oil on the skin side only. As we're doing all of the cooking on the skin side, the skin almost acts as like a non-stick pan for the meat. We don't want to apply any direct heat to the meat of the fish, as it's just too intense and will dry it out. we're cooking everything on the skin side and then resting it on the other side. And I'm just gonna really lightly season the flesh side of the fish. You want to do this at the last minute because salt will pull moisture out of the fish. And even though it's a very small amount, we're trying to keep this as dry as possible to facilitate the crisping of the skin. So we wait till the last minute because if we did that a few minutes before, that could create a little bit of steam when it cooks. So that might sound like kind of an extreme measure, but we're pretty serious about crispy skin here, so we kind of go to great lengths. We're almost paranoid about moisture when it comes to the fish. And we're cooking this basically tataki style, and the reason that we're doing that is that we want to crisp up the skin without, almost without cooking the fish at all. So it's gonna be at about rare, and then we'll rest through to about medium rare. As you can see, we've just barely blistered the skin, but the flesh of the fish is left almost completely raw. We're trying to retain as much of that flavor though by cooking it. The more that you cook fish, the less flavor it has.
Okay, so here we have our mackerel that's been aged for 5 days. This is this same species that we were looking at earlier. This is just a image of it after it's been done aging. And we're gonna show you right now how we butterfly the mackerel in order to serve it on the menu and grill it whole. We're just gonna come right down the spine here, really gently, and just cut about halfway and pull one of these fillets off to the side here. And there we have our Pacific chub mackerel that is ready for the grill.
So we're gonna cook this really hot and fast, just to the point where the skin is crisped up. And by that time, it'll be kind of medium rare. So we just want a tiny bit of oil to go on the fish. I'm not even gonna brush it completely. It's also really important here that the way that we cook this, the skin protects the meat. So there's no direct heat touching the meat ever. We never flip this over until it rests. To me, this is like the seafood version of barbecue brisket. This is better than any brisket I've ever had. What I'm looking for is for the fat to start rendering and to start bubbling over. And we call those pizza bubbles. We're basically trying to make like Neapolitan style pizza. As this is resting, we just season it. We just really gently season it by spraying some beef garum onto it, which is basically like fish sauce that we make from the scraps from dry aged beef. And then just a little bit of finishing salt as well.
So we have our grilled chub mackerel here. This has been finished over charcoal. It's just grilled on the skin side only. The residual heat sort of warms the rest of the meat through and allows it to set as it rests. As you can see, the skin on this is still completely crisp several minutes after it's been grilled. And it basically would hold like this, so we just serve this at room temperature. And we're just gonna kind of just present this really simply. So this is a sauce. It's essentially a salsa macha. We think that it's one of the most flavorful fish that you can serve. It's a perfect size. The skin is amazing. We think that this is like about the best fish that you can possibly eat out of the ocean. Okay, so for our next dish here, we have the McFarland Springs trout. So as you can see, you have all ranges of doneness here. So closer to skin, it's cooked through, and it's mid-well, medium, mid-rare, and then almost completely rare on the bottom. And we just serve this fish room temperature as well. I think it has the best expression of the flavor and texture of the trout when it's that temperature. When I first tried this fish, it was almost unbelievable that it was a farm-raised fish because of the flavor of it. It's so similar to wild trout. You can't find this quality of farmed fish or this much similarity to a wild product anywhere. We've prepared a shoyu here that we make that's made with dried mushrooms. There's matsutake and porcini in this. And just gonna spoon a small amount of that into the base of the bowl. We chose to pair this with matsutake because we think that the flavor development of the trout as it ages on the bone has a mushroom quality to it. It has the same umami. And then we're just garnishing this, served with some steamed and shredded matsutake mushroom.